name is Eric Smiths. I'm a registered land surveyor, an examiner with the Board of Surveying and Spatial Information New South Wales. I'm a long-standing board member and past president of the Country Surveyors Association of New South Wales. I'd like to acknowledge the Awabakal people, and I pay my respects to the Elders and First Nations people viewing this interview. On behalf of Country Surveyors, I have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. John McNaughton. John has been a registered surveyor for more than 60 years. He's an active member of many community and professional organisations, including CSA. John was elected Lord Mayor of the City of Newcastle and held this position during the time of the disastrous earthquake in 1989. John has a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with us today. We're going to start at the beginning. So you attended Newcastle Boys High School and then started surveying when you left school. So what attracted you to surveying as a career?
Well, I'd spent a lot of time on my cousin's farm at Bathurst, yet home in fact, and I enjoyed that very much. And I looked for a job when I left school. I'd had it in the back of my mind all the time, and one of the other ones was mining engineering, which around here meant coal mining.
Of course.
Mum said to me that I could do anything I like except go to a coal mine.
Right.
So I decided that surveying sounded a pretty good idea. So that's how I started.
So you gained your surveying qualification under the articles system, which is something most younger surveyors, younger than me even, wouldn't be familiar with. So who was your master surveyor? Because you had to work, it's a bit like a traineeship, you had to work under a master surveyor.
My master surveyor was Reginald Frederick Bruin, which is a Belgian name, B-R-U-Y-N. A sheer chance I managed to get a job with him. Interviewed me, but we used to work Saturday mornings in those days. He interviewed me one Saturday morning and said that he'd give me a try. So I joined them and I've been there ever since.
Yeah, wow. When were you actually qualified as a registered surveyor?
In 1961, 1962, I think 61. I think that's the sequence.
The current registration as a surveyor in New South Wales involves a series of exams. You've got to have that expertise in 5 separate competencies, as we call them. Is the registration process now similar or completely different to what you went through using the articles system?
But it's very similar.
Where did you actually do your rural work for your registration process?
Well, what people don't realise that we were right on the fringe, and people in Newcastle were blessed with experience because we had the inner city where we were doing party wall subdivisions and major buildings and high-rise to the extent of 4 or 5 stories, not terribly tall, but they were. But also we were doing well up into the country. Surprisingly enough, I did my rural survey. You can see it from here if that building wasn't in the way, at Merriweather Heights.
Isn't that incredible?
Because it was the residue of the Merriweather estate. They'd subdivided all the land through Merriweather as a result of the AA company. And
because it all would have been old system being AA company land.
Yeah, it was. It was old system. We converted it, and it was a real stack doing the northern boundary because the DMR had come along and resumed the road, which is now the highway, but that wasn't built until about 65 or thereabouts. But when I did the survey, it was just that you found all the pegs and all the marks up, but the rest of it, there was 129 acres, I think it was, And then we had to subdivide it into two parts for some reason it escapes me now, but there was a line right across the middle of it so that I had a misclose in it, and fortunately one of the blocks closed perfectly.
Yeah.
So at least I knew 50-50 where it was, and using the tried and true techniques that you and I understand. The younger ones don't get the opportunity to do it because there's just not so many rural surveys done, and not so many for where most of the surveyors are, which is in the Sydney.
Yeah, and the techniques have changed too, because we're no longer traversing that 130 acres. We'll use GPS.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, the experience of doing all that work and getting to the end and then having that sinking feeling of the numbers not adding up is something that younger surveyors just don't see.
No.
Particularly in a rural job.
No, they don't. And I can't use the instruments anyway. But I still supervise difficult jobs, and I'm pleased about it. I enjoy doing it, and but I can damn well use one of these devices and fly over the moon. But you don't know. You say, look, I want that and that located, and put it in, give me the coordinates of those, and we'll sort out where the boundaries are.
Obviously, you bought into a partnership with Palmer Bruin in 1962, 63, that sort of era. Obviously, at that time, you said you were looking at jobs in other places. Would you have accepted a job in a very urban practice in Sydney, or are you someone who would have remained in a...
That's an easy question to answer. No, I would.
Flat no, yes.
Yeah, both. No.
Yeah. Let's move on to your community involvement. Obviously, since you were a young adult, you've been involved in more than 100 community organisations, from the Red Shield Appeal to the University of Newcastle and the Australian Conservation Foundation, to name just three of, probably more than 100. So as a surveyor, you were invited by the Scouts to assist them with the upgrades and to acquire land for the Glenrock Lagoon scouting facility. So that's obviously one example where your surveying skills sort of brought you into that community organisation. Did that happen more than once? Was it something that, because you were a surveyor, someone said, "Oh, can you help us with, something else?" Or
not so much. People ask me. That was one specific one. That was given to me as a job.
When did you become aware of the country surveyors? Were you always aware of it when you started with Palmer Bruin?
No, I wasn't, but I became aware because we moved into the Bank of Commercial Bank of Sydney when the building was opened in 1921, and we had been there ever since. And in about 1955, 56 or thereabouts, I was told that in the loft above the strong room, which your strong room had an enormous heavy door,
that thing, yes,
and slammed shut and locked with a key. But I never remembered it ever being closed, let alone locked. But to get to the loft, you had to. I see the OH&S people, they're turning their graves over this. You got a chair and a draftsman's stool, and you stood on the chair, the draftsman's stool, the top of the door, and that meant you could get into the loft. So I went up there and I found all manner of things, including the original minutes of the establishment of the Country Surveyors Association. And that's how I found out about it.
Really?
And I remember Mr. Turner, who was the surveyor who started the Country Surveyors Association. He wrote pithy remarks in his field books. There's one with a surveyor who he had little respect for, and he noted, "There is the peg, but where is the corner?"
Oh. Mr. Turner was a partner in Palmer, Turner and Bruin and retired in 1953. So this is how those CSA records came to be stored in the loft at your office. So how did you become involved? Was that sort of the start of when you got involved with the association at that point, when you discovered the first minutes and the letters?
You might gather that I've enjoyed a number of things. Yeah. I recall going to a Country Surveyors Association meeting in Sydney. That would have been about 1966. And I went down there to see what it was all about and to see, as a result of finding these notes and speaking to Mr. Turner about it, on the odd occasions I did see him, I was interested. A great deal of this stuff was blatant self-interest because I thought, well, these people know a lot about surveying. It's been drawn to my attention that I don't know worse, I don't know better, because I've only ever worked for one firm in my life, and I was only an employee. What was that? 8 years, and then I became a partner, and I've been there ever since. So I saw it, and this became very clear that it was right. It was a wonderful place to make friends, of course, but associates who knew a lot about what they were talking about, and they added quite a bit to the value of the institution. And anyway, that's how it started.
So how does Country Surveyors as it exists today compare to what it was when you first got involved?
Well, I don't know how widely this is going to be circulated. To be quite blunt about it, the conferences in Broken Hill and Griffith were like the old days. They were country surveyors talking about country surveyors' issues. And then it came Easter time and you went to the Easter conference. I'm sure it was John Crichton stood up at a meeting and said, why don't we meet somewhere in the country, bring your families along, and we can have a social meeting and we can have people who talk. And this is a linchpin. If you don't publish anything else, publish this. We could have it with country surveyors. We could talk about our problems and what we want to do, and we can do it for a weekend. We can organise speakers, and anyway, we did that. And the first one was at Tamworth. The second one was in Carpenter's House, Orange. But we also did an inspection of something or other, and a speaker who knew what they were talking about specifically for country surveyors. And it became a very, very valuable thing, it still is.
Okay, so we'll move on to discuss your time at council. So I'll just sort of put this to you from my point of view. I've been asked several times to stand for local government. I've always refused because I find anything that I have a particular passion or interest in, I feel I'm probably going to have to stand aside as a declaration of conflict of interest. And even if it's not a project I'm doing, it may be one of my competitors, and I don't want to be seen to be sort of biased in any way in that respect. So did you find that to be an issue during your time at council?
No, I noted your comment there. I didn't. And perhaps it's got to do with the size of the place, because as far as declaring a conflict of interest and retiring from the chamber, I did it twice in 9 years. I can't even think of what the issues were, but I wouldn't take any risks on that.
No.
So if there was any chance of it happening, I wouldn't have stayed. But no, it's never been a problem.
So while you were in council, some of the noteworthy things that were changed were things relating to development and heritage and water quality and traffic management. And these are all things that sort of very closely relate to surveying and development. So how did you separate the business interests of yourself and your clients and that sort of thing from the benefits of the community as a whole?
Well, I never saw a conflict of interest in any way, but the use of my surveying skills were absolutely marvellous. And we just talked about the Gold Highway, that's a case in point. And that was a result of the Mayor of Dubbo, who was Tony McGrain.
Yes.
And he suggested it, but we put it together. And there was, as I was saying, the Deputy Lord Mayor was Frank Rigby, and I asked him to coordinate it, and we had several meetings about it. But being a surveyor was a wonderful thing.
The Newcastle earthquake, it happened on the 28th of December, just after Christmas. It was at 10:27 in the morning, so it wasn't at night. It measured 5.6 on the Richter scale, and it claimed directly 13 lives, and a further 162 people were injured. 50,000 buildings damaged, 300,000 people were affected. And the damage bill in today's dollars would have been about $4 billion, which is serious money. As we've just discussed, it was incredibly fortunate the timing that it happened between Christmas and New Year. Many workers weren't at their offices, including yourself and your staff. And obviously at different times, the casualties would have been much more serious. So you must feel very fortunate for not just yourself, but obviously your associates and your family and your friends, that it was just the timing was so fortunate to happen that in that time.
We were so lucky, as you mentioned, the timing of it. The week earlier, on Christmas Eve, say, the place would have been actually packed with people. No, my position as a surveyor came to the fore when we had to reopen the city. I knew the ropes. I knew the fact that people had to rebuild. It was a monumental effort.
And of course, understanding the construction process, you understand you've got to have heavy vehicles in and out. You've got to have construction machinery coming on and off site, so you know that obviously the transport corridors are critical.
Well, that's right, and I got into a lot of criticism for demolishing buildings, but we couldn't get ambulances through the city because the place was strewn with bricks.
So you were actually on holidays at Tea Garden sailing it during the earthquake itself.
Yeah.
And you were brought back in a police paddy wagon, in the front seat, of course.
Yeah.
And you came to police headquarters in Newcastle?
When I got to Raymond Terrace, I could see this enormous black cloud and see the BHP had been so clean for so long that it was worse than I'd ever seen the smoke from the blast furnace.
So even prior to the cleaning up efforts in the 50s and 60s, when there was more pollution, you're seeing more smoke from the earthquake. Yeah.
And that's when I started to think, well, I wonder who's in charge of this mess. And I was talking to the constable, and by that time we're well down towards Raymond Terrace. We're coming around. There was a bit of damage in Raymond Terrace. It just might be me. Came in, and then when we got to Mayfield, it was obvious that it was terrible. Bricks all over the road, and we had to weave in and out them. And then I said to the constable, look, I'd like to go to the police station and find out what's going on. So I went directly to the police station. We're going to do about who's in charge of this. I simply don't know. So what I did, I called a meeting of the ambulance, fire brigade. The police were there, council was there, the SES, emergency service, they all came except the ambulance. But I spoke to the chief of the ambulance, and I understand you can't come. They were working out of the ambulance station with all their telephonists and no wall. This wall was gone.
Oh, goodness sake.
It's fallen down, and they're all inside doing the best they could. And they were doing it very, very well because we needed the ambulances all over the place. The point is that we actually chose the right people to be in charge, but we did it by agreement. We said, listen, let's make the police in charge, and until we really know what we're doing, we'll make the police the prime area. With everybody rallied around, but because we hadn't the focal point of the council and the police, they all knew where to go, and we gave them specific instructions. Being a surveyor was a very, very advantageous thing. And
so, being a surveyor, we're typically a very safe profession. On a bad day, no one dies in surveying. We have, a mathematical error or, some equipment might break or something like that, but people don't generally get seriously hurt and they do not die. So how did you deal with a situation where, something that you required done could lead to someone going into a place of danger? And, did you think about, the fact that suddenly you're playing life and death games?
no, I didn't give it a single thought because the people who knew what to do were there.
So, John, during the initial recovery efforts, a lot of buildings were being demolished and had been damaged. So was John McNaughton, a surveyor, concerned about surveying monuments such as buildings being removed and the effect that it may have had on the cadastre?
Yes, I was, but later on, over that, but where I was conscious as a surveyor was that there was so much work being done without council approval. And we just couldn't allow it, but there was nobody there to police it. So I had to do that myself because I had to get council approvals. So I put together a team of a building inspector, a clerk, an engineer and a driver. And I had, I think, 5 of those teams because...
So they were roving around the city?
They weren't roving, they were walking.
All right.
Because every house, the street was damaged.
Right, so they'd pull up at a street and just walk down and assess?
And they were carrying 3 stickers that were stuck on the house. And if they wouldn't stick, they were tacked on so they couldn't fall off. One was red, one was yellow, and one was green. The red ones, no one was allowed onto the premises, no one. And when we say no one, the first thing we did was ring up the police and have that person arrested. It was because when they went around, we had a building inspector who could talk about the council regulation, we had an engineer who could talk about the safety, and we had a clerk who could record it all, and a building inspector who could approve it. So if the thing was minor and could be repaired, they got a tick straight away. And let's say probably 50%. And there were, 10, 12,000 buildings damaged. And so that was a major thing. That was because I was a surveyor.
So after the earthquake and you're setting up the recovery, you had to lock off part of the city with the barricades, as you mentioned, and part of your task as Lord Mayor was communicating to the community exactly what was happening and where they were allowed to go and why they were not allowed to go other places. So how were you communicating with the locals? Obviously you had television interviews?
I did, but what I had more than that was a brilliant journalist who worked for the council that I was being pestered to death about interviews, and every reporter in the country wanted to talk to me.
So quite time consuming that grab you any hour of the day when you're trying to do jobs.
Well, he put a stop to that. He said, what you've got to do is tell them I'll be having 2 press conferences a day, one at 10 o'clock in the morning and one at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's time for the television to get onto the 6 o'clock news. It was a series of decisions about what we had to do before it could be opened.
So that set the timeline.
Yeah, it did, because we didn't know. We were still bugged by the aftershock. We didn't know when that would come or how much it would be. And we knew that if there was an aftershock, the buildings were so shattered that there were going to be bricks dropping off it all over the place. So we couldn't run the risk of that. And what it was, that by using engineers and seismologists, we can find out where the damage was likely to be if there was an aftershock. And we could barricade those places off so that if the building was likely to drop bricks all over it, we could have it isolated and we could have traffic lines. Now, the New Zealand city will be closed for 3 months. Well, it was bad enough as it was 12 days or something, but it would have been disastrous if that had occurred. We had one intersection that we could not risk because it was key to the whole traffic generation, and it was on the corner of Scott Street. And if there'd been a tremor, so much brickwork would have fallen off it that it could have been another tragedy. And so that had to be screened off, and that intersection was key to opening the whole of the city. That had to be fixed. And the police said, until that intersection operates, you can't open the city. So we just got all the big swinging balls and so on, and it took a lot to demolish the building.
So with the perimeter that you had set up that was changing as things were made safe, I believe there was a series of maps published in the Newcastle Herald showing the changes every day.
The big thing about the newspaper was printed and delivered to your front door. You could tear that page out and stick it on the fridge.
Yes.
And you knew where you could go, keeping in mind that we reduced that perimeter every day.
So in the recovery efforts, was council able to provide assistance to businesses? I'm not talking necessarily funding, maybe advice, guidance, contacts for, contractors or something like that?
Oh yes, we could. And it was a real feat, because that was in the middle of a major depression, and Newcastle didn't have it. We were awash with money, but that was absolutely necessary. We did so much of it, and it required another surveyor, because we had to have, after the earthquake, we had to have a coordinator who knew how to do exactly what you were talking about.
So was council, in the immediate few days after the earthquake, were they able to operate business as usual more or less, or was it a complete halt on everything while you gathered your resources?
Well, it was a complete halt on everything, because the big thing, the one thing we lacked that we couldn't do without was cash, because the engineers said, I urgently need these traffic boards. We've used up all of ours. So I called a special meeting of council. So Councillor Ron Robinson, who was one of my Labor Party team, was a financial officer for the John Hunter Hospital, which was in the middle of construction at the time, and he looked after us as councillors. So I moved that we transferred the $500,000 to the discretion of the town clerk. But as soon after we had the meeting, nobody could do anything. And because it was in the holidays, nobody knew what was going on. And we dialed down this. And as I say, Bob Hawke arrived the day of the earthquake, and Nick Grider about, I think, 2 days later.
And of course, being a surveyor, you're used to dealing with legislation and how complex it is.
Yeah.
So did you find that your surveying experience sort of lent itself to interpreting that kind of legislation and understanding the restrictions you were working?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I knew it, but as you say, you know it too. And we might not know much about the criminal law or abstract company law about work on the international scene or anything, but we do understand local government law and the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The city was really quite lucky to have a surveyor in charge.
Yeah, I can see.
So many things that occurred.
So once you've got past the initial stages of recovery and you're into full-on, rebuild mode, were DAs sort of given any sort of priority listing when you're looking at residential applications to restore? Were they given any preferential treatment or anything like that, or was it just first in the door, first out the door?
They were given preferential treatment to the extent that they were assessed. And I don't think it was ever a case where a new application was ever stalled, looked for, but there were a number of cases for repairs that were pushed forward, and there was actually a team looked after that.
Oh, especially assessing repair efforts for
There was a group of planners and engineers who were actually working on those things.
Were the engineering standards revised in light of the earthquake? Did it change how the engineers and building assessors looked at development applications and structural designs?
Oh yes, absolutely, because we were absolutely in a non-earthquake zone. And as a matter of fact, the insurance company for the Workers' Club sued the council. They said, this is your fault because you approved the building. And it went to the High Court, and we won very, very substantial damages. They were a bit sorry they did it afterwards because the maps were so clear.
I understand that Newcastle had, in theory, zero risk, wasn't it?
Yeah.
On their mapping,
Yeah, it did. It was absolutely zero. Why we don't shout it from the rooftops that we're going to have another earthquake, and we're not doing anything about it.
No, we visited New Zealand last year in Christchurch.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting watching the videos of survivors of the relatively recent earthquake over there. Because New Zealanders basically, they don't say what was that, as in what was that, an earthquake. Their question of what was that is what number on the Richter scale is that. They're so used to an earthquake that when they have one, their first thought is, well, how big was it? Whereas here, we think it's an explosion or a car crash, or we do not automatically associate that with an earthquake.
No,
And as you say, there's nothing out there now to educate the general public or any of us, really.
It's just so wrong that it's not.
I mean, humans are notorious for forgetting the lessons of history.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that Newcastle was very privileged to have yourself in a leadership role during the earthquake and the recovery, and obviously a lot of your team were very talented. But you must be very proud of how the city has recovered, and to see the fruits of your recovery efforts coming to light, even still today, really.
Well, I was originally, but the city's such a mess now.
Let's talk about Margaret. Obviously, a long and happy marriage. When did you get married?
25th of August 1962.
Yep.
I know it very well. It's my youngest brother's birthday.
Oh, good work.
Which it gets what's the 25th of August? Oh, that's Harry's birthday. I know I'm going to pay. I go, I'm not allowed to drive motorbikes and I'm not allowed to go scuba diving. I've got to get the kick somewhere.
So have you ever taken Margaret in the field as a field hand to help you out with your...
Well, this evening you might run that past us. Sunday afternoon, we go to church in the morning. We take the 4 of the kids along with us, going for lunch. And we'd like to go for a drive this afternoon. Oh, yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, that'd be good. What's that take and plumb bob and staff doing in the car? Oh, we just might with. Why do we end up in a quarry through a creek? And it was never around here because you can do this on your way out from work.
Exactly.
Do somewhere up the valley. And it takes a long time to get there. And yeah, it was the very competent field hand.
So you've got a wide and very influential career. You've got an amazing legacy in so many different ways. Country Surveyors have honoured you by having 2 scholarships at the University of Newcastle. Obviously, you have things like the Order of Australia. You have Emeritus Lord Mayor. You've got an honorary Doctorate of Engineering at the University of Newcastle. Have I missed any of your legacies? What are you particularly proud of?
Probably the thing that I'm most proud of is something that doesn't happen now, but it's an opportunity to tell somebody. The most dangerous square mile in the state of New South Wales used to be right here. We killed an average of 2 to 3 people every year for 42 years. And when I became Lord Mayor, we were still doing it. Dangerous part of the city was from this that road just there, which is King Street, to Glebe Road, which is about a mile away, and from Derby Street, which is up this way, to Stewart Avenue, which is just there. That's it there, right there.
Yep. So this was traffic accidents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see, it's an old AA company subdivision, and it's a straight square grid. And it always happens when that occurs. We decided that we're going to go for traffic calming, and the DMR bucked their branch off over it because the things we wanted to do, we had 5 in the first priority ones, and we did those 5, and we did the first one we did was at Carrington because it was quite small, and we're just testing the water and just seeing how it went. But this one went extremely well.
Of course, by the time you add those fatalities annually over the tenure of your time as Lord Mayor, it's probably more people than were actually killed in the earthquake itself.
Yes, so there would have been, but I was there 9 years, and that would have been completed by that time. So yes, there would have been.
Yeah.
There would have been more people.
So, I mean, we're all recognised as different people to different groups. We can be a father, Lord Mayor, registered surveyor, esteemed colleague. What would you like to be? How would you like to be remembered?
A good person and a good husband and father. I think as far as the husband and father's concerned, I'm pretty sure I got that one in the bag.
Oh, I'd like to vouch for the other one. I think you're a good person. So, John, thank you very much for your time. It's been fantastic and make a really good story out of this.